Hi ladies and gentlemen, Krzysztof the Polish Geek, and I decided to do this bonus video I promised for you after all. And after I did my Donkey Kong Country Marathon, I decided to also review Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, because this game is amazing and it truly recaptures the original magic of the original video games on the Super Nintendo. Like, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze has originally been released on the Wii U, and it was a great game, but because Wii U as a console overall didn't sell well, the game was largely overlooked. But then it got far more attention when it got ported to the Switch. And I honestly think that the Nintendo Switch version is the definitive version of the game, and that's the one we're gonna talk about. And Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is such an amazing game, and it is probably my favorite Nintendo Switch game. I mean, right after Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, but then again, Paper Mario Thousand Year Door is technically a GameCube game originally, so I guess you could say it's actually my favorite game on the Nintendo Switch. But Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is a truly magnificent game, and it truly recaptures the magic of the Super Nintendo trilogy. Which one I prefer? I prefer the original trilogy on the Super Nintendo, but then again, this actually might be very much nostalgia blinding me. But again, Tropical Freeze is the closest it got to recapturing this old magic. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is an awesome platformer and a really amazing game. If I had to pick the best modern 2D platformer, it would actually decidedly be Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. I guess modern if you consider an 11-year-old game at this point modern, really, but I still definitely prefer the original trilogy on Super Nintendo, but it's entirely not out of the equation that nostalgia is strong here, and it very much blinds me, but still, I will always prefer Super Nintendo trilogy. But still, doesn't change the fact that Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is still an amazing game that greatly pays homage to the SNES trilogy, very much recaptures that magic while still very much feeling fresh, modern, and amazingly evolving the series in the right direction. In order to understand what makes Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze so amazing, among other things, among many actually, but first, let's discuss a little bit of Donkey Kong Country Returns. Donkey Kong Country Returns was a pretty good game, and for a diehard Donkey Kong fan like me, it was certainly a nice treat. It had a lot of what made original trilogy great. The gameplay felt very similar, and it was pretty challenging but fair, and platforming was a lot of fun, and each level had a very distinct and unique feel to it, such as the first three games, and all in all, it was also upgraded for the modern day in a way that the camera angles now worked a little differently when it came to jumping from barrel to barrel, and it could turn temporarily to 3D, for example. However, all that being said, in my opinion, Donkey Kong Country Returns just played it a little bit way too safe, and it mostly played homage to the very first game and pretty much ignored two much better sequels. And I wasn't a huge fan of the enemies. Those planks of wood, they just felt so bland, and the bosses were just regular jungle animals possessed by those planks of wood, which really made them feel so lame. Like, when it comes to bosses, I generally prefer if the boss fights himself instead of just possessing another animal to fight for him, really. And again, Donkey Kong Country Returns was a pretty good comeback, but it did feel like playing it way too safe at times. But Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze does everything that Returns did right, but improves on it in every way. Like, while Returns feels like a same comeback, Tropical Freeze feels like Retro Studios actually being serious about reviving the franchise, and you could tell how much they loved the original three games and did their best to recapture that old magic. And they succeeded pretty much. Just as in Donkey Kong Country Returns, the only playable character here is Donkey Kong, but in Returns you could only get Diddy Kong for company, but here it's not just Diddy Kong, but Dixie Kong now returns as well, but even Cranky Kong joins the company. But the main playable character is still Donkey Kong, but I don't really have much problem with that. After all, you do gotta give the guy a chance to shine in his own game series at some point, especially that in the original trilogy he was only the playable character really in the very first game, not in the two much better sequels, so I don't have much problem with that. As I just said, you gotta give a guy a chance to shine in his own game. And I also really love how each of your companions has different unique ability that's very helpful. Like Diddy Kong has his hovercraft that allows you to stay in the air up a little bit. Dixie Kong, on the other hand, has her ponytail again that here kind of serves as some sort of helicopter or a much better version of Diddy Kong's hovercraft, since it holds you in the air a little longer and can get you up a little bit. Cranky Kong, on the other hand, has a cane that he can bounce off of the ground, and although this ability is the hardest one to master, once you do get a hang of it, it's apparently the most easy to play with him actually. And I actually like to switch between which character I choose to accompany Donkey Kong. It depends on my mood who do I give him for company. Nintendo Switch version, which again is the version we're talking about, also has Funky Kong mode. It's basically an easy mode, but I don't really do it. I like some challenge, and besides, this is the story of Donkey, Diddy, Dixie and Cranky, not Funky. The story of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is, again, pretty paper thin, but again, Nintendo video games are mostly about gameplay and fun first. And the story is that Donkey Kong has a birthday party and gets this delicious looking banana cake and is about to blow his candle. And then, Snowmads, led by evil Lord Frederick, clearly inspired by Vikings, invade DK Isle, freeze it, take it over and throw Kongs out. And now, the Kongs have to reclaim their island and couple smaller different islands, each run by one of Lord Frederick's lieutenants. Not only is every single level mechanically slightly different from one another, but they all have very different visual style that gives each one of them a different unique flavor. Like, the backgrounds in this game are so beautiful. This is easily one of the most beautiful looking games in existence, and it's such a feast for the eyes, such as the background of African savanna. I mean, Donkey Kong savanna, but based on African savanna, or the beautiful coral reef under the water and golden leaves falling from the trees, and also the amount of detail that was put into every level is just stunning. Everything that was put into the level feels like it serves the purpose. As I said, I love how every level is not just different in visuals and looks, but mechanics as well. Like, I really love that level in Donkey Kong Savannah, where the background of sunset looks so beautiful and the music is gorgeous. It feels straight out of the Lion King. We'll get to this soon enough. And even if it is technically a fictional world, it is so immersive, and you outright feel like you're in African Savannah, even if it is technically a Donkey Kong Savannah. And I also really love how the kart ride levels are back. On one of them, where Donkey Kong rides on a cart and is chased by a giant saw blade. Like, they truly decided to go above and beyond with the creative levels in this game. And the swimming levels are better than ever. Like, the swimming feels so fluid and all that. And one of my favorite levels is actually one by being chased by a giant kraken, or Squidicus, since that's his actual name in this game, but come on, that's obviously Kraken. I also really love this jelly level in the fruit harvesting factory. Not only it's beautiful looking, but it's kind of tasty too. I also really love the final levels, which take place back at DK Isle, but because it's been taken over by the Snowmads and frozen, it's all frozen now, and gives kind of this Nordic aesthetic, fitting considering that, as I said, Snowmads were inspired by the Vikings, so the snowy theme at the end fits perfectly with the Viking motif of this game and of its main villains. And Another really cool thing is that there is literally a moment at some point where you literally roll around in a giant snowball, kind of like an avalanche. This is really creative. The only one of the animal buddies that's back this time is Rambi the rhino, and while I really love animal buddies, and I do kinda miss them, I'm glad that the one they chose to bring back of all of them is Rambi the rhino, since he was actually my favorite in the original trilogy, so I'm really glad that he's the one who's back. And the levels involving him are actually some of the best ones, especially the final level right before the final boss very much involves Rambi the rhino, and it's one of the best and most unique and most fun and most challenging levels in the whole game. Squawks the parrot also makes a cameo as one of the items at Funky's shop. Granted, he only really feels more like an item than a character this time, but still, really nice cameo. And I also really love that this is the first time that instead of just revolving around one island, the Kongs actually visit couple different smaller islands before going back to Decale Isle, and each island tells a small story about its area. I really love that. Like, there's this island that harvests fruits, and in the first level you see animals taking fruits away before you later learn that those fruits are turned into popsicles that are meant for a polar bear, a boss of this world. Wow, what a gangster! Having all those animals just work in that fruit harvesting factory so that he would just enjoy popsicles. Or how in the second island there's this giant owl tree where owls live, and the boss is their king. And that actually also kinda reminds me how King Sing was a king of zingers and the nests were right outside of Crazy Kremland. Speaking of boss battles, I think they are really good in this game. They do actually put quite a fight, and they are quite challenging actually. Like, in the Super Nintendo games, I find the bosses really easy at this point, but then again, this might be because I got really good at the Super Nintendo game bosses at this point, but here in Tropical Freeze, I think they're actually quite challenging, and they can give you quite a hard time sometimes. Like, in fact, it does admittedly feel sometimes like they're specifically designed that they can't really be fought by Donkey Kong alone, that you are actually supposed to have one of your three partners on you in order to make beating them actually possible, but it doesn't matter. I love it. I still think they are greatly designed both physically and mechanically, and I do really think that the bosses in Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze are really good and really challenging, and I saw also a complaint that they can take quite some time to defeat them, but I love it. I do actually really like it that the fight takes quite a little bit of time. Overall, the bosses here are great. And I also really love how always at the beginning of each boss there is a cutscene right before fighting them. The boss battles are amazing, but that also brings us to one sole flaw in this game. One I never ever saw anyone else talking about, but someone has to do it, right? So I know it'd be me, and that's I don't really like how at the end, when each boss is defeated, it's always the same thing, just Donkey Kong punching them into oblivion with the black screen around. And I don't really like that. I would rather have each of them different, unique defeat animation. Like, look at the old Donkey Kong Country games, like in Diddy's Kong Quest, anytime a boss was defeated, they each had a different, unique defeat animations. And same thing with Donkey Kong Country 3 Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. But in Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, like in Returns before it actually, it's always just Donkey Kong punching them into oblivion around dark screen. Still, not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. And I really love the final boss battle with Lord Frederick. Like, Lord Frederick for some reason gets a lot of hate, but I just don't get it. Yes, he's really difficult, but come on, he's the final boss. He's supposed to be difficult. I think Lord Frederick is a really great final boss, and possibly my favorite boss in the whole game. He's challenging, like I just said, but again, final boss should be really challenging. And the volcano area around is really awesome, and he looks really awesome too, and I love how at some points he sits in the background and you have to throw his minions at him. Yep, I really don't get the hate. I think Lord Frederick is a really amazing final boss, and how I've been talking, how they all do the same thing when they are defeated. Lord Frederick is also the only one that actually has a defeat cutscene. I mean, natural, since he's the final boss. And the musical score doesn't disappoint, no surprise there. After all, David Wise, the original Donkey Kong Country composer, is back, so of course he's gonna have amazing ideas for a soundtrack, and some of the soundtrack is a remix from the previous games, which is in my opinion nostalgia done right, admittedly mostly from the first game, but still, like, I really love how for the underwater theme, aquatic ambience, the theme music of Underwater of the first game is back, although remixed version of it. And it's amazing, but on the other hand, for the Squidicus chase, on the other hand, Lockjaw Looker is back, which was on the other hand the theme of Sunken Basement in Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy's Kong Quest. But the game also has plenty of original, amazing soundtrack of its own, such as the Donkey Kong Savannah one, basically giving vibes of Africa and Lion King. The soundtrack in Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is amazing and truly shows that David Wise is just born to compose Donkey Kong Country soundtrack. And the bonus rooms are back too, although admittedly they are kind of actually a downgrade from the first three games, because in the first three games all the bonus rooms were really unique and really fun, while here they're just like pretty much Donkey Kong in a temple level trying to collect all the bananas before time runs out. And while it can be a fun challenge actually, at the end of the day it's just not quite the same thing of what bonus room used to be in the old games, like how they're trying different creative ways of what to do in the bonus room. And completing all the bonus rooms doesn't really give you much, like other than granting you a gift in the form of a gold puzzle. Again, bonus rooms don't really give you much, in contrast to Diddy Kong's Quest and Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, where all the bonus rooms would actually unlock extra levels and extra ending for you. Still, even if they're a downgrade from what the bonus rooms used to be, at the end of the day, they're still a pretty fun, entertaining challenge, even if a little bland. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is a really amazing game that pays homage to the video games I fell in love with in my old childhood, and a game that just reminds me of why I love video games in the first place. The beautiful and gorgeous visuals, well-designed levels, insane attention to detail, challenging yet fair, fun and amazing platforming gameplay makes it one of the best video games on the Nintendo Switch and a must-own in your Nintendo Switch library. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is a truly amazing game. Do I think it's better than the original trilogy on the Super Nintendo? Not quite, but then again, this might be very much nostalgia goggles blinding me, and sadly those goggles will never ever be taken off. Like, if I did the ranking subjectively, I would probably put it like at number 3, behind Diddy's Conquest and Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, subjectively. But objectively, again, not sure, but if someone said that they think this is the best game in the series, honestly, I could see why they think that. Again, I will always be blinded by the nostalgia goggles and they will never ever be taken off, but honestly, if someone says this is the best one in the series, I totally could see where they're coming from. But even if I will always prefer the original Super Nintendo trilogy, Tropical Freeze is the closest to recapturing that old magic. And even though this game, even though it's technically the most recent and the newest Donkey Kong game, it's actually 11 years old at this point, and since then Nintendo hasn't really touched Donkey Kong. Nintendo, please do us all a favor and revisit Donkey Kong. I'm sure you have some, you can come up with some really awesome idea for a new Donkey Kong game. Nintendo, we're counting on you. We would like to revive Donkey Kong and bring us some new awesome Donkey Kong game. And thank you everyone for checking out this review. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, and this time the Donkey Kong Country Marathon is done, is complete for good. And talk to you soon. Bye.